This program is powered by thevirtual.show, making your offline events virtual. Ladies and gentlemen, the host of WEBIT Virtual, Dr. Plamen Russev.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of WEBIT Virtual program, this time on the venture vertical and how coronavirus and what it means for the investments and the venture capital industry. We are in a special moment of the human history. We are going through something that no one has written about, no one has been there, and I hope everyone will return though. This is a good start for a discussion with venture capitalists who are one of the symbols of success and well done decisions with very well measured risk. Aren't we all doing this now? What is the risk? How do we make sure that we save our own economy while we never ever let jeopardize people's lives? How do we measure that risk and how do we make the right decisions? But above all, today we'll be speaking also about how we save the future of innovation, the contemporary tool of sharing innovation with the world, the startup ecosystems. How do we make sure that we don't make the wrong moves and we continue having a booming and blossoming startup ecosystems in Europe, in America, in Asia, all around the world? These will be questions that we shall be discussing today. And I would like to remind all of you that you are all invited to join us. Use hashtag WEBIT. Hashtag WEBIT. Twitter is the channel where we will be accepting your questions to our esteemed panelists. And here I am to announce who they are in our studio today. The virtual studio of WEBIT is full of people who make right decisions. The first part of it, I shall be having the pleasure to talk to Hendrik, who is the founder and the person who stands behind the venture fund Earlybird. Furthermore, we will be joined by another great guy, a person who is running as managing partner the SoftBank's advisors. And we will continue with the discussions later on to discuss where we're going next. Now, allow me to introduce my participants in the panel properly. Dr. Hendrik Brandis is a co-founder and partner of Earlybird Ventures. Founded in 1997, Earlybird invests in growth and development phases of a company. With over 1 billion under management, 7 IPOs and 24 trade sales, Earlybird is one of the most successful venture capital firm in Europe. Hendrik's current domain is and focus is on enterprise web-powered infrastructure and SaaS, in addition to selected consumer services. He's been serving many years as a European Private Equity Venture Capital Association board member and a chairman of the Venture Capital Platform Council. Thank you for joining us, Hendrik, with us here. Thank you. And our second participant is another great investor, a person with very diverse background, the operating partner of SoftBank Investment Advisors, Javier Villamizar. SoftBank Investment Advisors, through the SoftBank Vision Fund, which most probably every one of you knows, are investing up to 100 billion in companies that are creating the new revolution, as they say. And Javier himself has a very extensive background in the telecommunications sector, both in South America and globally. Thank you so much for joining us, Javier. It's really a pleasure, and I'm grateful for both of you for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Russev. It's a pleasure to be here.
Where are you, Javier? Where do we have this connection with you?
I'm in beautiful Miami, Florida, secluded at home for the last 4 weeks. Completely consumed by video conferences and calls with our portfolio.
To some extent enjoy the acceleration and the privilege not to travel and to stay at home, and have a lot of Zoom meetings though, but being very active. But I think not less productive than I've been before, maybe even more productive.
I think it's time now to find that introvert deep into us and to enjoy as much as possible. I've been traveling 200 days per year every year for the past many years, and now for 3 months I haven't moved from our place in the mountain. Javier, my question is the first question is to you, and I would like to understand from your point of view, from the SoftBank's macro point of view, what and how the situation with COVID is affecting the startup and the VC scene.
It has been very interesting. Again, definitely something that nobody in the world, and particularly on the startup and the growth stage companies, were prepared for. I would say that the summary of the impact, we have seen companies across the entire, VC and PE investments, either, being benefited by the crisis, and that happens with some companies in our portfolio, and as I said, others in the industry. Companies that are in the business of delivering food and delivering groceries, providing telehealth, telemedicine, providing remote education. These companies are enjoying this tailwind that is, pushing them to extremes and to limits that in some cases they were not ready for. We see companies, growing 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a year, and that is what gets us excited. In the last 2 or 3 months, we have seen these companies in these spaces I just mentioned, growing 5, 10 times in just, a few weeks. So that's one side. The other part is companies that are experiencing a serious drop in their demand from the consumer side. Sectors that got hit very hard obviously are travel, hospitality, tourism, real estate. These are industries that never had in their imagination a potential scenario like the one that we're living today, where people is like you and me, we're not traveling, we're not staying in hotels, we're not going to an amusement park, we're not going to a concert or a show. Companies that were in the business of facilitating those experiences and those logistics are being affected. They need to rethink their business and accommodate to this new reality.
And how is SoftBank preparing for the upcoming months? Maybe to define upcoming months, how do you see the horizon? For how long ahead do you plan now in this crisis?
It's probably the most difficult question that you can get asked today. We have been working, and my team and the team that I belong to is the operating group. So we are operators that work very closely with these companies. So we have been engaging in conversation with companies, and kind of the common approach is most of these companies need to think about think about survival. They need to think about how to take care of the employees, take care of the business, you know, uh, think about continuity of the business. But they need to concentrate in today. And then they need to some way start planning for what is going to happen in 9 months, 12 months, where we have a little better clarity on how this new normal is gonna behave or is gonna pan out. Thinking about the next 3 months is very challenging because uncertainty is the name of the game today. Uh, every week, governments, local governments, federal governments are adapting policies and adapting regulation and adapting, new measures to cope with the different situations. So trying to plan for what's going to happen in 2 months, honestly, is kind of like a futile exercise because things are moving very fast. So we talk about with our companies, we talk about maintaining, obviously, the company afloat, uh, being very careful on cash flow, thinking, as we have said for many years, cash is king. You have to have a vision on burn and how that cash is going to keep you afloat for the next, as I said, 6 or 9 months. Um,
Yeah, we saw the news that some couple of billion are not going to be invested. At least this was the news recently in regards to this. But I'm not sure if that's part of that particular strategy or another decision. Maybe we can discuss that later. Hendrik, if I might ask you the same question in regards to your take on how COVID is affecting the startup and the VC scene as a whole.
Yeah, let me distinguish between the perspective of a startup and the perspective of a VC investor, which I think is not entirely aligned in these days. So if I put myself first in the shoes of the startups, then I think an immediate impact is that cash will become even more scarce than it used to be. So cash management, control of burn, keeping burn moderate, keeping cash reserves, planning a little bit more for the mid and long term becomes very, very, very essential and can become a question of survival. The selection of the syndicate you have, which supports you, will be increasingly a key factor of success, because what typically happens in these sorts of crises, and that also happened in the last financial crisis and the crisis before, is that investors focus on own portfolios. So these startups who got a strong investor portfolio, investor syndicate with deep pockets, are in a relatively good position, much better than those who does not have a similar quality in their investor base. So managing cash is key. The other dimension is if you look from the VC's investor or the VC's perspective right now, especially in the early stage, what we are doing. First of all, NAVs in early stage portfolios are not severely affected. Even if you look back and all numbers show that early stage venture capital tend to outperform global asset industry over the years of crisis. The reason being is that especially early stage venture capitalists do not use leverage. So as you know, leverage goes both sides. Second thing is that our NAVs are largely determined by the terminal value, by the vision of a company, not so much of current cash flows. So if current cash flows drop, that does not have a significant impact on NAVs in our portfolio. And last but not least, we have a relatively diversified portfolio, 20, 30 companies in one portfolio. And as it's been said before, there are beneficiaries of the portfolio, of the crisis in the portfolio, and there are companies obviously who suffer. But all in all, the picture you get is, at least if I look at our portfolios, is pretty balanced. If you then, this is for current funds and mature funds. If you look then to the young funds, to the funds which are now going to be invested, I think they should be grateful for this crisis. I mean, I would state, the famous statement of Churchill, never miss a good crisis. What we will be seeing is that entry valuations will come down. In the last crisis, they came down between 20 and 40%, depending on stages. I think this crisis is more severe. We may see valuations dropping from between 25 and 50%. And what we have already also seen in the past, that it has taken 3 to 4 years to recover until we again see pre-crisis valuations. If you now have a young fund starting investing, you have the privilege to invest low valuations, and then when it's going to exit phases, you can exit at normal or even increased valuation. So that should give current funds, young funds, a tailwind of maybe a factor of 2x, just because of market timing. So all in all, I must say I'm not so, especially from the venture capital perspective, I'm anything but, I'm not pessimistic. I'm really optimistic, and I think we can cope and survive that crisis pretty well.
I know that, Dr. Hendrik. I like your optimism. Actually, we are all discussing here. Yesterday, we had a very interesting discussion with the founder of Internet and Surf, with the CEO of Samsung, and with two of the highest level possible former members of the US Department of Defense. And we were discussing about geopolitics and how this coronavirus crisis is acting as a catalyst. So what you've just said, you just outlined one possible opportunity for VCs, especially the early stage ones, to as Churchill said, they could never miss a crisis. But let's talk on the other side, though, because VCs only exist because there are some phenomenal ideas out there on the market, young entrepreneurs who have been putting their lives on fire. I think we all have been there. I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I've been doing that all my life. They've been putting their lives on fire, their relations, their everything, to make this one amazing idea they believe in happen. About them, a lot of VCs have prepared already some additional funds, providing emergency capital to their portfolio businesses. Do you think that they will be able to make it through, and who will make it through this crisis? What is your take on the opportunities in front of the startups, and who should be able to support them further? Do you believe in the support from government? Two questions. Please go ahead, and then I would like to have your opinion on that.
I think there's always good and bad in the crisis from the perspective of a startup. First of all, I think we will be seeing acceleration towards innovation and the application of new digital solutions. So the entire process of digitization will be accelerated. I think this is without any doubt, and that goes also to the benefit of startups and new business concepts there. On the other hand side, as I said before, cash and capital will become more scarce, and that will create challenges. So I think we will see a certain how should I call it, polarization in the startup world. We will be seeing the excellent companies, the very good companies, obviously having a disruptive, innovative concept, benefiting from new digital. They will be still getting cash, and they will not have any problems to secure significant amounts of capital. And but the more gray cases, who were able to also get capital pre-crisis, may fall off and will have significant challenges and may not survive. So I think we will be seeing a weed out of the ecosystem. a pretty Darwinistic weed out, but it may do good to the overall ecosystem, I think, because it will drive proper returns.
I would like to request now Javier to make a very brief reflection on that.
Yeah, I think the situation, particularly in our case, and I think as Hendrik mentioned, creates an increased need for VC and PE investors to kind of double down on the portfolio, to support the portfolio with incremental capital, with operational support, with the let's say the development of synergies across companies in the portfolio to get out of this crisis. So it's the role of the investor some way shifts during this time more towards that support of the portfolio. Yes, there's going to be great opportunities to go and invest at lower valuations. There's going to be some interesting economic opportunities, but I think from our side, it's very, very important that when you have committed this amount of capital, sure that these entrepreneurs, these founders get more than just cash. They get operational support to continue. Governments are doing their part. Other pieces of the ecosystem are supporting companies, but investors have a key role on this recovery.
I think it makes perfect sense in general if we face the truth. So is it a common thing to do for all VCs or those that you know to optimize their portfolios in this hard time and to basically get rid of some of the startups that were okay but not enough? So is it a time to to clean up a little bit, or how do you see that?
I mean, if we want, we can always get rid of portfolio companies. That's not our objective. Our objective, our target is to help our companies to grow and survive and actually be able to realize their vision. However, since we will be needing to support our companies more on an internal basis than we used to. So we have to make ourselves more independent on outside capital than in a situation pre-crisis. We may not be able to support 100% of our companies in the full way they deserve. So I do think that there is a tendency in the industry, and I'm not talking just about early bird, but about the industry at large, that portfolio managers will look at the companies in the portfolio and will make a certain reaction. These are the companies we will be supporting in any case. And maybe we even increase our commitment in order to double down, utilize the unique opportunities and chances we see in this crisis. We may even increase our allocations to these companies. And then we will have difficult cases which we may have put on no money, no time before, and they for sure cannot count on us in these days, because we simply, not so that we don't like them, but we simply do not have enough resources to cover all needs. And everybody is trying to reduce the middle bucket as much as possible and try to get clarity whether a certain portfolio company goes into the upper or lower part of the portfolio.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. Now I would like to introduce, because we have only 5 minutes left, and I would like to have Ms. Leisha Chi-Santorelli, who is a senior journalist and foreign correspondent of BBC News. Leisha has been with BBC News for nearly a decade, working across TV, radio, and digital. She's based in London, where she looks after the BBC World Service editorial partnerships with Marketplace. Hello, Leisha. Wonderful having you with us. And you shall be representing the the audience. We have 5 minutes, and then we have our next guest, Mr. Tim Draper, joining us to continue the discussion. So please do your blitz interview, and let's hear what the audience and you would like to know from these fantastic two participants in the panel.
Well, thanks for having me. I was looking forward to Valencia, where it's 19 degrees Celsius, but my living room will do. I'm going to jump straight into some of the audience questions that have been sent through Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. And the first is from Jake Davis in the UK. He's asking, what can an ordinary person do to make some magic with the small amount of cash that he's able to save at the end of the month? Where do you start and where can you invest first to create what he calls the successful circle of money? I think that this question kind of stems from uncertainty about what to do with their cash and whether they should maybe put it into the stock market, or is that bad advice?
Oh.
Ooh. Javier, do you want to take this? Or shall I?
I will be getting into investment advisory here if I get the question.
No.
So, we'll probably stay away from that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Leisha, but I also do agree as a host that well, we'd better focus on supporting the ecosystem and the innovation rather than giving that type of advices at that particular program of WEBIT Virtual. Yeah, would you mind to check another question from the audience or ask?
Well, we have one from Yusuf Hamid, who's asking, how do you re-accelerate funding efforts with a company that disrupts workplace and travel when initially having to travel for meetings to demonstrate? He also actually has a second part to his question. How do you find more funds, for example, for a mixed reality company, ACO, with a Beam software platform? That's quite specific. So I think it's, how do you find more funds?
I mean, if I take that one and say, at the end, everybody understands that the travel industry is hot right now, and if you try to find more funds right now, I think it's all about talking about the outlook and the vision. And I think everybody will agree that we will not stay at home forever. So some sort of travel will be coming back. And what I would try then to lay out and say, even in a moderate scenario, if travel comes back, there's a hopefully attractive business model for us, and we can participate, and unit economics are going to be good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in a nutshell, it's all about the vision and putting credibility to the vision. And if that's going to be a convincing story, I would be not so pessimistic. I think there will be money for it.
I'm increasingly fascinated, Leisha. I'm increasingly fascinated with the way that this crisis has awakened a new understanding on how technology can disrupt multiple industries. Traveling is gonna be different. Working from home is something that we're getting used to. Events like the one that we're participating today, that we're holding it, from the comfort of our homes, but we have thousands of people joining to listen to us. So technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, they will be more prevalent. People will look into that more closely, and use cases that before were a little bit kind of like far on one side, now are going to become, front and center of innovation and adoption.
And we only have about a minute or less than that left to get back to what I was hearing from doubling down on portfolio investments. Might be some hard choices that have to be made, like doctors have decision, who do we treat first, who do we pull down on funds. Now, when we look at SoftBank, for example, obviously you have declared that you're going to post your first operating loss in 15 years. We're seeing historic losses actually with the company. So when do you decide to down, and when do you decide to basic example with troubled investment.
Oh my gosh, we lost Leisha on the way.
I think we did.
But
I
Javier, please
can take the
reflect on
question.
that question, please, as what we've heard, and I hope to have Leisha back.
Oh, sorry, I did get cut out. I just said, when do you double down on your portfolio investments, or when do you cut and work on troubled investments like WeWork or OneWeb?
I think the decision, is something that we make in a daily basis. Again, portfolio management is all about that. It doesn't matter if we're living COVID-19 or we're living a financial crisis. As any investor, as Hendrik does at Early Bird, or Tim has done across his entire career, you evaluate the performance of the company. You look at the potential. You reevaluate the investment thesis that made you put money into a certain company. You look at the path to profitability. You look at the potential IRR that you're gonna get, and then you make that decision in a daily basis. It's all about continue to have conviction on an investment. As long as that conviction stays, as long as you believe that the company has a great product, that the customers are happy with it, that there are more customers that you can go and capture, then it makes money to continue putting dollars and giving incremental capital to founders.
Javier, Hendrik, it was such a pleasure. Please stay with us if you have time until the end, and please promise me you're going to join us again to see how things are developing, how many of our predictions happen, and I wish you health. I'm very, very grateful for having you in our virtual studio, and look forward to have you back. And you are part of the WEBIT family, and thank you so much for spending time with our audience, which currently is 8,400. At a certain moment of our discussion, we were above 10,000 live viewers at that very moment in the show. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I would like now to say that these amazing people were with us doing what they're doing because of our next participant grandfather, who basically created the venture industry in the world. You'll hear more after the break. Stay with us, and you will be with me and with the legendary Tim Draper.